All right, everyone. So now that we have finished drawing all of the examples that we're going to study, or at least a few of them that we're going to pick from to paint, I'm still not sure exactly how many I will focus on. Now we are going to focus our attention on what we're going to be studying. So I want to introduce you all to this concept of features. And so features are what I call basically little components of the anatomy of any thing that you're studying. So, for example, a feature of your hand is that they have nails. Another feature is that they have knuckles. A feature of a knuckle is that they have these ridges in between them, right? These individual parts, digits, these are your knuckles, but still, your knuckles have this like more rough, stretchy skin on top. Another feature of your hand are these lines on the palm. They're specific things that happen, and they can be texture, they can be color, different things that are just specific facts. And so what I want to draw your attention to today are the features within the latex and leathery material that we're studying. So before we start painting, we want to focus on these things and list them out. So one thing that I see on the more reflective materials for like this latex one is that you have these harsh highlights. So I'm going to write that down here. And in the harsh highlights, there's this sharp highlight area that has like almost no fall off at all. It's very, very sharp. Another thing I notice is that you have these thin, very thin, small highlights in certain areas where there's creases. This also comes up a lot in this one here. There's like these little dots. So crease highlights. Why did I spell crease that way? Another thing I notice is like there's this kind of in between black and pure white highlight that happens a lot. So you see like in this area right here and in this area over here, you see that happening a lot. So I'm gonna say like a 1/2 large highlight. I'm gonna write small there. And then something else I see is that sometimes you'll get this pure black shape that kind of streaks down. See, like it happens here on her backside as well. I wish I drew this one. This one looks nice. And you see it kind of wrapping around there. So sometimes you get these streaks of both pure black or whatever the color of the material is, but also you get these streaks of highlight, like this one right there. So streaks, shadows, shadow, and highlight streaks. Now, another thing I notice is the wrinkles. So there's a lot of very pronounced wrinkles. And how do I describe this? It's more like, yes, there are wrinkles, but they're only in places where the joints are bending. So wrinkles at joints is what I'll call it. Wrinkles at joints only. Pretty much, there's only wrinkles where it's bending, and then everywhere else is smooth. That's something to pay attention to. Another thing to notice is sometimes there's reflected light of another color, but it's usually just the color of the material itself. So I will say one other reflected color, and then I'm going to say 1/2 again because it's 1/2 intensity. They're very soft. It's not nearly as intense as it's like this highlight here, not like the really bright highlights. And I will also notice that there's kind of another level of a softer highlight. So I'll say probably like very subtle highlight. I'll call it 1/4 intensity. So like you see here, like there's this bright highlight, super bright at the top. Then you have like this medium one here, but then there's a very, very, very subtle one like over here. That's not pure black, but it's still there. It's still very clear. You can see that a little bit here as well. And I think the last thing to note about the very shiny edges is that, well, there's a couple more things. One is going to be, what was I going to say? I just forgot it. Well, I'll go back in the other order. One is going to be how they're shaped. The creases are shaped. So there's oftentimes going to be a shape like this here. So you see like the cross section for this area in particular, there's a raised kind of wrinkle, and then there's a flat area below it like that. And you can see that here as well. And then eventually it becomes like they're all flat, but it starts out like this. That's how a lot of the creases are made up. Or the crease pattern will just be a simple crease that eventually becomes flat like that. So I'll just like draw this and kind of draw a diagram to kind of help illustrate how that crease is working. Those creases aren't there. Those are more like directional lines for how it's flowing down. This is a crease in and of itself. And then I think the last thing, is there anything else worth pointing out for the really shiny latex? Oh, the last thing is going to be the edges. So there's sharp edges. And then there are semi-sharp fall-offs like this. You see that highlight fall off? And then there's a rare case of something that's just pure, like almost an airbrush. And that doesn't happen there as much. But sometimes you will see a very, very soft airbrushed kind of look to the highlight as it falls off. I think it's usually for these lower intensity highlights. So let me look at the red one too. Like you see there, right? This is fairly reflective, but you see like this soft area with the shadow. So rare soft shadow / highlight. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna say there's a rare soft shadow only. I don't really think it happens too much with the highlights. So these are the features for the reflective. Part of the material. The matte one is more like pretty much all the same as those, but everything has a soft edge. And creases have hard highlights. For sure. And I think that will be it for what the main differences there. For the more, there's a little bit more of a texture. So there's a subtle noise texture here and there. But yeah, those are the main features that I would encourage you to take note of, and that's how I take note of things. And if you want to go even further, this isn't particularly necessary because we're going to actually paint it, but you could paint a small diagram of how each one of these features looks. So I'll do a couple for example, if you really wanted to like create a little spreadsheet for you to be able to use In the future, you could do something like this and say, okay, harsh highlight, I want to show what that looks like. So I'm going to find one and I'm just going to show that it looks like this. It can look like this where it gets thicker. And then that's probably better for like a crease highlight, but some of the crease highlights also just looked like this kind of thing, where you can take a lighter color too and put it like right there. And then you can erase away at that and try to copy one of those crease highlights like that. So that's like a crease, and you could show another one. And then you just do those kind of diagrams next to it, so you kind of get an idea for what you're looking at. And you can be more specific with it. And that is a really good way to study too. But since we're going to paint some of these, I don't think it's as necessary, because eventually once you're finished painting, you can copy those things and cut and paste them and put them next to these notes that we took for use later on, and just to encourage more efficient learning. So with all that done, I'm just going to start painting now. And we are going to, you can always refer to the notes that you did take. I feel like I have looked at these enough to be able to remember all of the different points I want to focus on. But first, I want to start off with the first one, because I feel like that one will give me, that one is the easiest one to find all of the features. And so what I'm going to do first is, I think I'm just going to fill in the background pretty much completely black. And I'm already running into a small concern here. It's like I can't see what I'm doing because I already painted everything black. So like, how am I going to be able to see the lines that I made? So I didn't make it perfectly black, but what I will do is set these line layers to multiply. That way I can see them a little bit easier. And I will try my best to make sure that the silhouette is what I want, because the silhouette is very important to get a very clear read at first. So we're probably going to paint about 3 of these, depending on how long it takes. Or I'll start many of them and then finalize some of them for you to watch later. But I want to do at least 3 with you all so that you can follow along. I think for now, I will speed up this process and color in a few more of these and then come back and then move on to the next step. I'm getting my drawing glove because my iPad is getting ridiculously hot. I'm gonna turn off my Cintiq too. Right now I'm duplicating them both to make sure that they're very opaque. Made a mistake with that one. They both need to actually have the layers on. Then I'm going to set them both to have alpha lock. That way we don't have to worry about coloring outside the lines. Then I'm going to make this one into a red color. Just pick something a little bit less saturated. And then I'm going to start with let's start with the one we talked about. So here, whoops. All right, so here I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to use this simple round brush, and I'm going to go ahead and paint something relatively off of white. and paint in a similar shape to what I see here. Now, I'm not too worried about doing exactly what was in the sketch, but it is completely fine to stick to that or deviate from it a little bit. I think that difference adds a little bit to the actual finished artwork itself. And now what I'm going to do now is switch to the sharp detail flat brush, switch back to that so that I can get into drawing in these different shapes. I'm interested in doing this highlight here, like that. And just looking for different places where the highlight was that I want to also add it in. The really bright white ones. And I'm using slightly off-white again because I feel like it will give me some room to breathe if I need to make pure whites. So just looking anywhere where I see something relatively close to a pure white. And I don't know if I'm going to finish this one because it's quite complex, but I do want to start on it a little bit. And I'm just going to paint in the white areas, and I'm making it all hard because I know I can soften some things later, but this is kind of like designing the light sources when you're designing a composition. You just want to quickly get an idea for what's going on. And then you can come back later and refine it. Some of the lines are preventing the highlights from showing really well, so that's annoying, and I'll have to fix that by either erasing them or moving these highlights to a different layer. Probably have been a good idea to paint this on top of the black layer instead of directly on it, but that's up to you. And you can already see with these key shapes, we're already getting a feel for the overall shape of the painting. And to be honest, for some of you, you won't even need to do the drawing part. You'll just have to, you'll just draw the basic silhouette. Spend very little time on the drawing part. And then you'll be able to jump into designing the shapes this way. I'm going ahead and filling in shapes that are important, but not necessarily pure white right now for that one. And I think I want to add a few more lines here just to illustrate what's going on there. I'll leave that one for you guys to study on your own. And for this one, I will do the same. Just painting in the different shapes that I see in white and worrying about smoothing the edges later. What I'm doing now is creating a separate group for both of these. And for this one, I'm going to start to change the brightness a little bit, bring it down a lot more. We can always brighten or darken things as we need to later on. You can use the lasso tool for stuff like this as well. We're just looking for the big shapes. Oop. Let's set this to be a clipping layer. Just looking for big highlight shapes. This is an easy one. And I'm going to let some of these be loose here because this doesn't exactly have clear edges like that. Let this one come down, all the way down like that. And then for this one, do a nice, this one needs to be much brighter. Highlight like this, and just bring that over. I see one here, and here, and here, and on our elbow right there, the inside of the elbow. Bring that one down, tiny one here. And that's pretty much it for the harsh highlights for these. So also, for the sake of time, I've decided that I'm only going to keep working on these two. And for these, I'm going to focus on this one here. So bear with me really quick while I duplicate these documents. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these apart into their own respective layers here. So I'm going to duplicate this. And actually, I think I might do this one here. That way we have two soft and two shiny. So we have these two. And then we have these two as well. So let's work on these two first. So let's start with the shiny one here. This will be a good exercise to simplify what we're looking at. And so my strategy for this one is going to be, let's alpha lock this. I want to not use too many layers, and I'm going to go straight into painting everything that I see using a relatively versatile brush. So I'm going to try using this basic brush here. I'm going to find like an orangey color like this. That was pretty accurate. It could be a little more saturated. A little darker. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and paint that in and paint a shape that I think looks appealing to me. That's similar and informed based off of what I see there. And it's really important that I'm using this softer brush here because no part of this value that's actually on here is very, it's actually still too bright. is very hard edged. On the other ones, I'm probably going to make separate layers, but I want to try not using I want to try painting on using only one layer for these. Even though that's going to be more difficult because I have to make sure to watch out not to ruin any of the highlights I've already made. So I just want to quickly start getting down the different colors and values I see. And I'm doing this, making this a little bit more red because I see that there, but it's too bright. Still a little bit too bright. There we go. And so my goal here is to quickly get down the values that I see here and colors in different areas. And I see that there's a light, very soft version over here that's much more desaturated than what I was painting. So I'll try this again. Very soft there. So I'm just gonna use that as kind of an airbrush effect there and paint some of that, let some of that come into the rest of it like that. And then there's a yellowy version up here like this. That kind of fades around that way. Bring a little bit of it down here on the arm here. Some of it is on the shoulder like that. And I'm pretty happy with, okay, there's some here as well. And I'm pretty happy with that overall. So now what I want to do is I want to let's lower the opacity of the line work a little bit. And I'm going to pick some areas where I want to be almost pure white really quick, just so I have that as like to keep my eyes seeing things correctly. Oh, that's a very bad brush to use for that. Okay, there we go. Just pick some areas that I know I want to be very bright. Like up here, be up here. This is like a near pure white that I'm using. And now let's go and use that kind of, remember we talked about that like 1/2 intensity highlight? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick this color. I'm gonna make it a little bit brighter. I'm gonna make it a little bit blue. And then move it towards the saturation a little bit and see how that looks. See how this looks compared with everything. It could be a lot bluer. I'm not really trying to go for exactly what I see there, but I just want some contrast with what I'm seeing. Oh, that's a little bit too blue. I just want some contrast, and it needs to be a little bit brighter with what I'm seeing in the in my current painting for the colors. So I'm just really just roughing it in right now and adding those colors. I'm not worrying too much about the edges as much. Letting the brush do a lot of the work and not having to go through and edit it myself is really helpful. Putting this, I see some lighter highlights in front of there. I see there's a lot lighter highlights over here that kind of gets into this area like fingers. And some blurred edges over here we'll work on later. This whole area is pretty light. Same with this one along the side here. Notice that kind of goes up that way. To simplify that to look like this. Kind of comes in that way. And I'm seeing that this is also largely in this area. There's a hard edge this way. Like that. We're going to add that shadow back in a second. And noticing this kind of does this over here. A little bit of that. Just kind of scribbling it because that place is very ambiguous. One thing I want to do really quick is like mix the colors. That way I can color pick and I don't have to pick from the color picker anymore. like that. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start blending a little bit with the soft brush for the areas that are softer, like this. I'll lower the opacity so it's pretty soft. And I'm noticing it's getting a little bit too blurred. So what I want to do is just blur the edge of it and not worry too much about making it super smooth. That's a very key part. So I'm going to hide this, and we want to just blur the edge of that highlight, not the whole thing. Same thing here, blur the edge of it, not the entire highlight. Let this fade in like that. Now you see that edge of this top piece is like this, so I'm going to try to blur that a little bit. It's just the top edge. Like that. You can see this is pretty blurred on this edge. And then same with the top edges of it here. I'll leave the rest pretty crisp. And then, oh, I missed some highlights on that corner. We'll come back to those. This is pretty blurred. It's not that hard of an edge. Neither is that one. These are pretty blurred on this side. And this one's a little bit blurred overall. So I'm just gonna move this down over it a few times just to mess with it. This edge is quite blurred. This edge is blurred a lot. So is this edge, but it still has a shape to it. So don't do that kind of thing. Just blend the edge so it starts to melt off. But see, like now that doesn't have that sharp edge anymore. So now what I probably want to do is to come back with that same airbrush as an actual brush and paint some of that edge back in. Because that shape is something that we really want to keep. Even though the edge is soft, this shape is still there. And as you can see, it's not exactly that white the whole area. There's some of this value there. So I'm going to paint it in a little bit on top instead of blending it right there. So that way we get that kind of shape and that edge curving on her back. I'm going to paint a little bit on top here too, so we get a sense for that curve. Do that again here. With a lighter touch, try to blend that in as well. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that color and I am going to use my light glaze brush to kind of glaze over this area so that we can have this highlight. Like this. Paying attention to which parts of the highlight are brighter than others. And looking at the shape again. Making sure it's not too bright. I'm actually going to limit myself to using this value, so I color picked again. We don't want it to get too bright there. And then I'll use a thinner brush to kind of create an edge for the arm. And I'll come back here and add those highlights I forgot. You can be much more careful and take your time with this, but I want to go ahead and hurry up and get the main idea with what is going on with everything here. And I see that this area could have some brighter highlights, so I'm going to bring this up. Bring that little triangle of a highlight in there. Give an edge right there. That really helps define the form a lot. And then let this stuff kind of fade. I'm gonna blend that a little bit. because those edges aren't that sharp. Let this blend in here. Blend it a little bit too much, so I'll add it back. And I want to go ahead and blur some of this as well. Now there's a little bit more of a highlight on top of here. So I'm going to go back to my light glaze, but the highlight is more like, it's much darker. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it to like this blue again, but make it a little bit brighter. And that's what we're looking for. Just something slightly brighter, maybe a little bit brighter. Like this. And we can fill in that area. Because the highlight I picked for this area was a little bit too bright. So basically what we're doing is darkening this highlight I put here. And then bringing back the darkness, this black that we have. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good. This is starting to look, I feel a lot more successful than I did with my last painting with this texture here. But I'm definitely remembering that this took a long time to get right. There's a lot of little tweaking to get those shapes to look good. So I'm pretty happy with how her butt is looking in this area. I want to take some of the darkness again and add it to some places here. Not worrying too much about refining. I want to go ahead and get those colors in exactly how I want them to be. Notice that edge here. This is darker. And then all of a sudden it gets brighter in this area. I'm going to use I can just bring up the opacity here. And then I'm going to use this dark color to bring that edge back so we get that nice fold. And then I'm going to fix up this highlight and then bring a highlight down around here. That looks pretty good. There, we're getting some nice details, some key details here. You don't have to get every single detail. And I'm just gonna blend this a little bit so that it's the right shape. Getting really nitpicky with this, but I want this to really, sometimes the shape is really key to being able to get this to look right and convincing. So you want that highlight shape to be just like how it is in the reference. Yeah, see that? Because we worked on that a little bit more. Make sure this kind of tapers in like that. That really looks a lot more realistic. I can make a little faint mark coming back up. Yeah, that looks really nice. And then I notice this isn't the exact same area as that highlight, but we can still make it work. We want to bring some of this value in the corner of it. I did not have that originally. So we can bring that there. And then overall, this highlight is too bright compared to everything else. So I'm going to take the soft blending brush and paint in a little bit of the shadow, the dark area around it. I'm going to be a little bit more organized with it. Like that. That looks pretty good. Go ahead and blend in some more of this highlight here. And then I'm going to use the brush to shape it how it looks in the reference. Use a soft edge to shape that brush. So even though these are harsh highlights, we're using soft brushes to paint them into the shape that we want. Like that. Giving that edge a look like that. Right. Now it's looking a lot more convincing. Yeah. That's good. I am still not as comfortable with this highlight. I want it to look more like the reference. It's not really believable. So I'm going to bring that triangle that I see down there and bring that in with the darker color using the airbrush that I have. And shape it more like this, and then add a little bit of this highlight in so that we can use that color to make our softer highlight color. And then I'll use that to kind of bring this down to my thick sketch area. Then kind of paint that shape in there, and then use the darker color to shape it up like that. And then bring this in so that the structure of the wrinkle makes more sense. So now at this point, I am thinking that maybe for this type of material, it's really best not to draw it at first. And maybe I think because I still like the look of the line work, what I might do in the future now is actually just add the lines in after the fact. So you guys are getting to see exactly how I study, where I think something will go one way, but it actually ends up going another way. One thing I do notice is that this whole area doesn't feel as round as I want it to. So I'm going to take some of the blue here and let's make this highlight more one shape. Like that. And then take some of this. Honestly, what I'm going to do actually is do a new layer. I'm going to take a blue, put it on top, and then mess with let's do clipping mask. I did too much of a black to start off with, so I'm going to see if I can use a blending mode to kind of make it. I like what soft light is doing. Use a blending mode to make it less black and use more of a blue color. So soft light looked pretty good, but it's just way too intense. I just want to take the edge off the blacks and make them more blue. Like this. I like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge that. And then now what I want to do, take this and lightly paint in that so it looks way more like it's curving. Reduce the size of the airbrush, take the highlight here and get that curve back. That little highlight here. Let's get this back. It's tricky to make a clear shape, but also not too harsh of a shape. Taking this color again to shape that highlight exactly how I want it to be. And then let's take this so that we can show the fold. Like that, coming around, up, and then over like that. So at this point, I am realizing it would just be overkill to record and narrate everything when we do the rest of these. But I also realize that this is probably one of the hardest ones. So I'll probably finish this one and then leave the rest as a time lapse and voiceover. Well, I won't be painting the rest, but I'll be painting maybe one or two more, and I'll leave that as a time lapse so that you guys can use that as a reference when you're working on your own. You because I am seeing that this material takes quite a bit of time to manipulate into being the way I want it to be. Okay, liking how that looks. And so the last step for this is taking this and taking kind of a really, really dark and just lightly making a gradient to show that this is a round shape. And so it's very subtle, but even within the shadows, you'll see that this is a round shape here. So that's very helpful to do. Like that. And I'm actually going to be adding a little bit of that here. And here, and here. It's kind of like a transition shadow edge, making certain areas darker to suggest that the forms are curving. Okay. Liking how this looks, I want to take that airbrush again and make this a little bit softer. And now what I want to do is figure out this color here. So I'm going to take this, make it a little bit more desaturated and bring it up to be even brighter. I'm going to take the airbrush here and actually just airbrush that in this time. And I think my preferred strategy now is going to be airbrushing and then cutting in with, let's bring the line work back. Airbrushing and then cutting in with a harder edge brush instead of the reverse. I think that strategy will work better for me from what I've experienced so far in this process. Bring this to be a little bit lower opacity. A little bit of an edge there. Yeah, this is looking good. Let's take this, bring that over a little bit more. I'm going to take the dark color and darken up all of this a little bit too bright. Take this color, make it a little bit darker, and then paint behind this highlight because I see that dark version there. Now what I'm going to do is take a harder brush and reinforce things like this highlight. Add a few more here. And then I'm going to take the dark color and paint that in to really make that fold stand out. Add a little bit of a dark streak shadow up here. Paint in this fold. Paint this a little bit more visible. And I'm going to make this a little bit brighter. And then we're going to cut in with the shadow. And then blur that a little bit. And cut in again. And then to make it look more 3D and round, we're going to take the airbrush again and airbrush this area slightly, just so it looks like it's round. I want to make sure everything looks 3D, even if there's not too much detail there. I see the highlight on that edge is much brighter. So I'm going to bring that up and desaturate it. Things tend to be desaturated the brighter they get. Add a few wrinkles there. This, I'm going to bring up that seam edge. See that little seam edge? It's not very bright, but it's there. It's very noticeable. Add some details there, bring that back down. There's one on her back. I'll work on this area a little bit. Let's add this bump that I had there. Let's make this a little bit thinner. Let's paint away some of these soft edges. This area is relatively sharp. And then let's make these creases look a little bit more believable. Making them thinner, look more like they belong there. Add some creases, some crease shadows here. Yeah, that's nice. And then right on top of this, we have that highlight shape here to really sell that edge of the arm. Yeah, that's really nice. I'm noticing the shadow area here kind of comes in and out too. So I want to make sure to pay attention to that. It's kind of like it's on top of the highlights, like that. With this edge, it's pretty much bright. So I'm going to use this highlight edge to kind of like work at it a little bit. It's not that bright though. Bring it down. Bring in some of these harsh edges. Like so. That could be brighter again too. Now let's add some of the sharper details here. Like that. Yeah, that's starting to look better when I look from when I look zoomed out. So yeah, I think this is probably going to be the only one. I'll render one more actually, and then I will leave the rest up to you. If you want, you can use the what do you call it? The drawings that are going to be provided in the Procreate or Photoshop file. That way you'll be able to follow along if you don't feel like drawing. Even though I do recommend you give it a try. But yeah, there's a certain point where it's like diminishing returns. As I keep working on this, it just gets more and more detailed since I did not stick to the drawing itself. And I think that will be my focus for the next one. I will use multiple layers and stick to the drawing. But I think that this is about to be it for all that you will need from me to be able to finish this. Once I get in these kind of stripy areas. Yeah, this is an important part because it really shows the wrinkles in her back as she's bending. This is interesting because you wouldn't notice it if it was another material, but you can see how much her back is affected by how she's placed her arm and all that. So getting this nice alternating highlight and shadow is a really nice feature to have. Like that. Getting those highlights in there when necessary. And those harsher shadows in here really help a lot. Then since I made her arm unnecessarily thick, I need to add some highlight there so it's reads a little bit better. Make this a little bit brighter. Bring this down right along the elbow here, just like that, and then bring it up along that edge, like this, just like in the reference. And then we want to bring in some more of this value, and then leave some of that shadow value in there to suggest that it's curving. And in order to do that, I'm going to blend that a little bit more. Paint in a little bit more of this edge. And let's put the line art full opacity. I think that has a pretty interesting look. Although, obviously it's more realistic in the finished areas where there's no line work. It does look a little bit better in those finished areas. But I'm really proud of this. I think this is definitely a successful study. There are some parts of it that were fails in the way I approached it and how long I thought it would take. But I think I learned a lot, and I don't really mind the length of time it took because I'm happy with the result. And it only gets faster from here. So I will go ahead. I think this is also good enough to look at different colors because this was quite a vibrant one when it came to colors. So what I'm going to do is we're going to hide this one for now. And then we're going to work on these, on this one, the back view here. Can we undo this, please? Okay. I can actually lock this. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm going to go in immediately, and for this style of painting, I'm doing it all on its own layer. But what you want to do for this style, and this is how I try to paint when I'm painting skin especially, is I try to do the most I can with one color and one brush to get it to look as close to what I want as possible. So I'm going to blend all this out since this is the softer, more leathery material than latex. What I'm actually going to do is blend all this out. And then, I don't know why that line is there, messed up. And what I'll do here is I'll try to get this color, value, whatever, to look exactly like how I want it to, without worrying about any of the other colors or shades or whatever. So I'm using my big grain brush, which is the same thing as the airbrush. I don't know if it's in my new pack. And I'm just going to use this value here to paint in as much as I can. And I'm going to try to be as clean as I can. And pay attention to how bright. So like notice how bright this area in the corner is compared to here. Only some parts of this area get that bright. So I'm going to make sure to pay attention to that. So that's looking pretty good. And notice how this area should not be that bright, but has a fold there. So I'm going to come back in later and make that more obvious. But I'm also going to come in and really make sure this edge is bright. Let's lower the opacity of the line work again. I'm going to come back on the layer above those and make sure that that's fairly bright on the edge. Just on the very edge. And then I want to use the same eraser, same brush as an eraser to erase away some parts that I want to be more sharp, like up here. That part is much sharper. I'm gonna go ahead and erase this edge here as well. Right, so I love using airbrushes because they allow you to get fairly hard edges by just making this brush size smaller. So you have to do less changing of brushes, and it's really easy to just stick to one consistent workflow for a big part of the entire painting process. So I want to get this transition to be really soft and smooth up here, just like it is in the reference. You want to try to blend less and paint in a way that's smoother and gives you a result that you have to rely less on the blending. That's always ideal. This whole entire part is illuminated a little bit. So I'm going to lightly paint there. And then so is this entire part. Pretty well illuminated. I'm not even paying attention to the colors right now. I just want the values to be what I want. And then this part is very bright. And so the cool thing what's happening here is you have this like corner here showing that top crease area here. The top of her butt cheek here on this side isn't getting as much light because it's coming more from in front instead of on top. So I can create a hard edge there and then soften it here. And I create the hard edge by simply erasing with a smaller brush size. Right, and that's a little bit too dramatic, so I'm just going to paint over all of it a little bit with that brush, with the airbrush. Come down, do a little ghosting, highlight here. Bring these two values on the two different seams much closer together. And then what I want to do is erase away that crease there where it's like this is ambient occlusion where light is not getting to at all because the crease is so small. Really easy to have that perfect edge by just erasing it away. See? I don't like how it looks a little bit bent. It should be a little bit softer of an edge than that, so I'll try to redo it with the shading. And then have to fix the line work later. So let's hide the line work even more so that we can see this more clearly. Yeah. Just hide it completely for a second. Getting that nice transition there. This part is one of the brightest parts. And then if we bring the line work back, we can see that we need to erase quite a bit here to be able to get that fold. Merge these two values together a lot more since we're going to use the eraser to show the difference. I'm going to blend that out a little bit. I didn't create that edge exactly where it should be. Again, it looks like this area is a little bit darker in general. So you want to make sure to erase away that portion so that it's, geez, I cannot get the right brush size. Yeah, there we go. Instead of blending, try to repeatedly erase and paint back with the airbrush. That'll give you much better results more reliably. Like that. Now we're getting that shape really accurate. There we go. So now we can take the airbrush and make it a smaller size and slowly erase away at the seam to be able to get that bump here, right? And then erase away slightly here because there's a shadow being cast by the edge. This one is really gonna be a test of your ability to master edge work here. Try your best not to just blend it, but try to paint it, especially if you're working in Procreate. Blending tends to be more reliable in other software, but Procreate really wants you to paint instead of blend, the way the brush engine is. So I'm going to erase away this area because I see that the shadows are coming up a little bit more on this corner, like that. It's not perfect, so I'm going to go get this brush, paint in like this, like so, and erase away again. Good thing about this brush is it does have some texture here, which is going to help us. And we can see that we're getting a little bit of the side of her leg there as the light is coming over. A little bit here as well. Adding that, using the edge to really illuminate that soft highlight there. And we have a seam. So we painted this with a hard brush so that now we can just come in with a soft brush and that seam is pretty much done for us. And then all we have to do, it's a little bit too bright. All I have to do now is take the eraser, use a small size, and then come back and erase. And then we can get that seam, just like how it is there. Nice. And then come in here, and the rest of this seam here very lightly transitions up this way, very subtle. Blend this way, this edge, because it's way too hard the way I painted it first. And then start to erase away instead of blend. Looking at it zoomed out, I'm pretty happy with it. This edge could be a little bit more tapered, like that. And the light shouldn't come up, basically. It should stay below her there. And then I'm going to paint in this little edge for the creases of the kind of stitching here. Give us a really nice effect. You can see how easy this is. We're still only using one color to paint this on top of black. Now that looks a little bit too much. It's not smooth. So I'm going to take the eraser, make it big using the airbrush again, and just blend that out. We're not really blending, we're just erasing. So now it looks, our brain can fill in the rest and make it perfect. I will take the blender here though. This whole area should be a lot smoother. I think that did a decent job. And so should this area. Like that. And looking at it overall, you see like this whole area there needs to be a lot darker. So I'm going to take the eraser and bring that in a little bit. We got to use a little bit bigger of a brush so that it stays as soft as it needs to be. I'm having trouble with this area, so I'll go in there and erase many times over using a smaller size. This edge should not be that sharp. So I'm going to take the painting airbrush and do a combination of blending and painting it back in to eliminate it. I'm going to hide the line work. We messed up that line a little bit there, but we'll come back to it. And take the eraser and erase a little bit of that. This highlight is just way too harsh. It's supposed to be very soft compared to the reference here. Yeah, you can see here, this is still way too harsh. So I'm just going to take the blending tool, blend that away, and take the eraser to really make it really big size, because we want this to look, because this tells us more about where the light source is coming from, and it makes it look more round. So you really want to make sure you pay attention to details like that. Now I'm going to take the painting tool and paint back into it to really make that shape exactly how I want it to be. All right. Take the eraser again. Really finesse this edge. All right. Now with that done, I'm going to bring back the line work. And I'm going to add some values there and just blend this. And then erase it away in the middle, so we get a perfect blend from her crotch all the way back up here. And then now we can worry about the stitching again. Take a small eraser. And hide the line work. Man, these brushes are weird. They like exponentially change size sometimes. Now you're going to be running into issues where when you're painting with one color and you want to just add a little bit of white here, but it gets too bright, yeah, that can be annoying. And so when that starts happening too much and you're getting fed up with it, merge it down. Just go ahead and merge it down. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to create a duplicate of this just so that you guys can see it later. And I'm going to go ahead and merge this down. Now what I can do is just pick the color exactly how I want it and paint exactly that. And it's much easier to do it right. There we go. And instead of using the airbrush this time, I'm going to just use a brush to paint in this edge. And then let's add a little bit of an area where it gets closer to it. You don't want it to be the same thickness the whole way. That gives the body a lot more form to it, and it makes it feel real, like the clothes are actually sitting on it, on a surface rather than something that doesn't exist. So we're really getting into this here and trying to make these edges really be believable. Just like this. It's a lot darker. There we go. Let's say that's pretty good there. And if you want to, you can go the extra mile and add in this highlight area. But remember, if you do, you're going to want to make sure to add the shadow in there as well, right behind it. So even though this one is a lot less material to paint and it's a lot less complicated, it still ends up taking quite a bit of time because you really want that perfection, or else it's not going to feel as nice. There. Too lazy to make the actual stitches. I'll just do a light line. There we go. And we see there's a light kind of fade there, and I'd say that's very important to have. Take this soft skin brush. Paint that in like that. And those edges are starting to annoy me, so I'm going to go ahead and erase them. This will do. Whoa, make that much smaller. Do something like this. There we go. We want these curves to be pretty much immaculate. Create a little bit of an indentation here for the material thickness. Almost happy with this shape overall. And then now that we've gotten to this point here, I'm going to come back in because I still see that this isn't nearly as round and as sharp as it should be. I'm just going to paint that back in. Like this. Very light touch and just continually work at it till it looks exactly like how we want. And then what I notice here is I'm going to go ahead and take this hard skin brush. These highlights here are pretty much extremely opaque. So I'm going to just paint that in to be flat. Like that. Now, let's bring the line work back. Whoa, that's not the line work. Like here, I'm gonna leave it sketchy like that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start adding some of that color variation, and that's gonna make this come alive a lot more. So I'm going to start off by actually duplicating this so we have a copy of it. And I'm actually just going to first add a little bit brighter of a white to make it stand out, because it's not all super flat like this. And then I'm going to start messing with the layers. I mean the blend, the curves. Curves, get it? And that looks much more like leather, as you can see there. We can really play with how much of it that we're seeing here. See that kind of fall off there is exactly kind of what we are looking for. There. So if we hide that, that looks a lot more like the material. We do probably need to come back and add some of the light lines, and I also forgot that we have some other ones here, but I'm much more happy with how this looks. So let me really quickly do that. Let's get this pencil sketch brush and add in, I'm just gonna make this a little bit brighter so I can, or dark, less opaque so I can see what I'm doing. And add in some of this. And do that, do it over. Add in some of this edge. Wait, I did it wrong. The highlight needs to be on the underside of the dark line here. Looks pretty good. And there's another one over here. It's not going to the right place, but it's okay for now. You know what? No, I'm gonna fix it. What's going on here? Oh, okay, I see what's going on. Yeah, we wouldn't see that anyway. Then I'm just gonna go ahead and paint this away. Like that. And then go ahead and erase the line work here. And blend that here. Need a little bit brighter of an edge here. There we go. So now let's add some colors. I'm gonna add another layer on top. Set this to soft light. Let's do like a really soft blue. Okay, we're not gonna do soft light. because I don't think soft light is interacting as well with the near pitch black latex that we've done. So let's just switch this to more of a lighter color layer. I'm going to clear it and start over. Get a little darker. Start adding that blue reflected light in. Add a layer on top of that and just leave it normal. Now we need to get some of those oranges in there. A little too yellow. There we go. A lighter color layer is really doing its job. And then on top of that, I'm going to start painting in the areas where the lighter color is not helping. Very much. Hide the line work. Put some of that blue over here. I'm going to add some more of that lighter blue to the highlights. A little bit on the edge of the highlight there. And then I'm also just going to straight up paint more of the shadow in there. But I'm going to make this a little bit green. I feel like a little presence of green will be very helpful. And selling this. Be a more yellowish one. Because we want those highlights. They're feeling a little flat right now. You really want those highlights to stand out. Get some of this color over here. And then let's put the line work back. Let's add a little bit more of that lighter shade here. Yeah, that gives it a lot of depth. Bring this closer together. Then we take this shadow, paint it back. There. Oh, I wasn't painting, I was erasing. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and erase some of the line work again that was inaccurate. And almost happy with this. Make sure that's the same value there. Why is that not looking the same? Oh, that's the line work layer, that's why. Don't paint on the wrong layer. That usually doesn't help. Now I'm going to erase some more of the line work layer that I feel isn't really helping. Probably a good idea to use the same brush we drew the line work with. And it's up to your taste how much line work you want to keep. I want to fix this area. In order to do that, I think I'm gonna, just color pick. Take a nice soft skin textured brush, paint those in. Yeah, that looks much more blended. Make this smoother. And I could work on all the different strips in this area, make it perfect, but that's just tedious stuff. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out again. Definitely worth studying. I like what the line work is doing. One last thing I will show you is one of my favorite brushes, the Dusty Glitter brush. You can take it and use it to add texture by just painting in the color of the texture. So I can just select the dark color and paint that over the edges of the highlights where I want more texture. And that kind of makes the highlights even more special and stand out. This is even easier in Clip Studio Paint, where you can have a setting to set the size of the actual little noise texture. So you can get in there and use a big brush, but not have to worry about using too big of a texture size. But in Procreate, there's only one texture. So if I make it really big, it's just way too small. So you have to, it takes a little bit more patience to do this in Procreate. But in Clip Studio, it's quite a bit easier. I'm just working away at it, trying my best to make sure that the edges of these highlights is just as soft yet hard at the same time as the reference, because that's what I'm finding is bringing a lot of the appeal. I'm gonna add a little bit of this highlight here. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. So if we look at what we've done, let me duplicate this, flatten, duplicate this, flatten, and then I'll hide those layers and delete the excess. Sorry again if my voice is dying out. I'm not still getting used to talking this much at once, but we're getting there. And this is so far what we have accomplished today. Very interesting colors. Really proud of this. We did a good job with the different textures that are necessary here. And so what I'm probably going to do is work on these a bit more and just show that time lapse. Just leave that in the Procreate time lapse, and then I'll post these probably on Instagram or something as well. And yeah, probably have some fun, maybe edit some of the colors, who knows. But I hope you have learned a lot from this, and make sure to keep track of those notes that you took in the beginning that we took for the different features, because these are the key parts of things. And maybe you want to go back through and select some areas here and paste them next to the features so that you can have a look, and then feel free to paint the rest of the drawings that are here. You're going to have those available for you. I'd love to see them. And that will be all from me today. Thank you so much for watching, supporting me so much. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one. Take care.